They said it couldn't be done, but they underestimated the power of an iron will. Watch as we bring you the most intense stories of perseverance and the ultimate victory of the human spirit. Subscribe now and fuel your own fire with these cinematic tales.
On the morning of April 7th, 2024, my daughter sat across from me at my own kitchen table and said, "Mama, Trent and I have been talking. We think it's time you started looking at some of the senior communities around here. Somewhere smaller. Somewhere that fits where you are in life." She said we. That's how I knew it wasn't her talking. I'm Essie Mae Dupree. I'm 63 years old, and I want to tell you what happened after that morning, because it changed every single thing I thought I understood about my life. If you're watching from somewhere out there, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story travels. And please stay with me until the end, because what I found in my late husband Gil's workshop is something I still can't quite believe, even now. I didn't cry that April morning. I didn't raise my voice. I set down my coffee cup, looked at my daughter, my only child, the girl I raised by myself through 6 of her father's worst years, and I said, "All right, baby, let me think on it." Then I went upstairs and sat on the edge of my bed and felt something I hadn't felt in 2 years. Clarity. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back. My name is Essie Mae Dupree, though my husband Gil used to call me S when he was in a good mood. And Essie Mae, all 3 names, slow and deliberate, when I had done something that genuinely impressed him. He didn't use all 3 names often. He saved it. I spent 31 years as a school librarian at Carver Elementary in East Memphis, Tennessee. Over 3 decades, I put 4,200 children in front of books that changed their lives. I still remember most of their faces. I mention this because my son-in-law, and this matters, I'll come back to it, once described me to his business partner as just a retired librarian. Like that was the whole of me. Like I had spent 3 decades doing nothing more consequential than stamping due dates on paperback covers. Gilbert Dupree died on January 19, 2022. Congestive heart failure, sudden, the way people say suddenly, when they mean without warning and without mercy. We were married 29 years. He was a pipe fitter with Local 150, worked with his hands his entire life. Drove the same truck for 18 years because he said a man who always needed the newest thing never had enough of anything. He was quiet the way rivers are quiet, still on the surface moving underneath. The first year after he passed, my daughter visited every Sunday. We'd cook together, his red beans and rice, my peach cobbler, whatever came in from the Saturday farmer's market. She'd tell me about her job, her apartment in Germantown, and every few weeks she'd mention her boyfriend, a man named Trent I had only met twice. In March 2023, 14 months after we buried Gil, my daughter called me from a parking lot somewhere. "Mama," she said, "I have something to ask you." I knew from the way she said it that it was something big. Trent and I are getting serious. We want to get engaged, eventually get married. But first, we need to stabilize. He's starting his own company, media consulting. He just needs a year to get it off the ground. Would you be okay if we stayed with you for a while? Just to get a foundation under us. My house at 1409 Elmwood Drive is a 4-bedroom Craftsman that Gil and I bought in 1997 for $104,000. We paid it off 6 years ago. I had been rattling around in it alone for over a year, turning the TV on just to hear another voice. Of course I said yes. They moved in April 1st, 2023. My daughter brought 4 suitcases and her grandmother's quilt. My son-in-law brought a truck full of equipment I didn't recognize. Camera rigs, lighting panels, acoustic foam, 2 monitors each the size of a small refrigerator. He was 36 then. Good looking in the way that makes you want to trust a person before you've earned the right to. Firm handshake, called me Miss Essie the first 2 weeks, then Mama E after that, as if we'd known each other all our lives. "We're going to make this work," he said, surveying my living room the day they arrived. "We're going to be so good to you." That was 15 months ago. The changes came in stages, the way water finds the cracks in old concrete. Slow, then suddenly. First, my son-in-law needed to convert the back den into a studio. The den was where Gil's recliner still sat, where I kept Gil's union logbooks, his tools on the workbench in the corner, and the little framed photo of the 2 of us at Niagara Falls in 1999, where we both looked 30 years younger and foolish happy. I moved all of it to the garage. My son-in-law thanked me with a handshake and had the walls repainted gray before the week was out. Then the kitchen. My son-in-law ate a particular way. Clean eating, my daughter explained, which I came to understand meant that almost everything I knew how to cook was somehow wrong. I'd make a pot of neck bones and cabbage, a recipe from my own mother, and my son-in-law would come into the kitchen, look at the stove, and say, "That smells amazing, Mama E," in the exact tone you'd use to compliment a child's crayon drawing. My daughter would eat 2 bites and push the rest around her plate. I started making 2 dinners, one for them, one for me. "You don't have to do that," my daughter said once, but I noticed she didn't stop me. The guest bedroom, the one with the window looking over Gil's garden, the room where my sister stayed every New Year's, became my son-in-law's editing suite. My sister started booking a hotel. She didn't complain, but I felt it like a splinter under my thumbnail. My neighbor Vernell noticed before I said a word. She came over one Saturday, sat at my kitchen table with a cup of Folgers she'd brought herself, because my son-in-law had replaced my coffee maker with a pod machine I couldn't figure out, and she said, "Essie, are you all right in here?" "I'm fine," I said. She looked at me a long time. That's not what I asked. In August, 8 months in, I overheard my daughter and my son-in-law on the back porch. The kitchen window was cracked open. I wasn't trying to listen, I was washing dishes. "She won't ask any questions," my son-in-law was saying. "You know how she is, she trusts you." "I just don't want her to feel like." "She'll be fine. Tell her it's about the estate. Tell her daddy didn't handle the paperwork right and it's just a formality." A long pause. "She's going to wonder." "Let her wonder. By the time she figures it out, it won't matter." I turned off the faucet, stood there with my wet hands over the sink, did not move. 3 days later, my daughter sat me down at the kitchen table and told me that her father-in-law had a financial planning background and that they wanted to make sure the property was structured correctly to protect me from estate taxes down the road. She pushed a folder of papers across the table. I saw words like trust and beneficiary and co-trustee. "It's just cleanup, Mama," she said. "It protects the house." I should have read every word. I did not. I signed in 2 places she pointed to, and I did it because my daughter handed them to me, and I still, even then, trusted her completely. I found out what I had actually signed 4 months later, but that comes after what happened in April. The morning of April 7th, 2024, my daughter sat across from me at my kitchen table and said, "Mama, Trent and I have been talking. We think it's time you started looking at some of the senior communities around here." She had printed brochures, 3 of them fanned out on the table like a hand of cards. Meadowbrook Senior Living, The Reserve at Germantown, Harvest Point Independent Living Community, full-color photographs of white-haired people doing watercolor painting and sitting at picnic tables with lemonade. "You'd have your own space," she said. "Everything on one level. People around if you need something. People around if you need something." Like I was a hazard to myself. Like I hadn't regrouted the hall bathroom tile on my own 2 months ago and replaced the refrigerator water line without calling a plumber. "What about this house?" I asked. She looked at the table first. That's when I knew. "With the documentation we put in place last fall, the house is protected in the trust now, and Trent and I are co-trustees, so the administration." My son-in-law appeared in the kitchen doorway. He'd been waiting just outside it. I understood that immediately. He was dressed and composed and ready for this conversation. "You don't have to worry about any of the property management anymore," he said. "That's on us. You just focus on your next chapter." My next chapter. In a place called Harvest Point, 40 minutes from my own neighborhood, surrounded by people I'd never met. "We were thinking end of June would give you enough time to settle somewhere," my daughter said. That's almost 3 months. 3 months to pack up 27 years. 3 months to say goodbye to Gil's garden. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, the girl I had rocked through ear infections and panic attacks before algebra tests, the girl I had driven to every track meet even when it meant leaving work early. I searched her face for the child who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms. She was in there somewhere, but buried under something I couldn't name yet. Fear, I think, the quiet kind. The kind that comes from a woman who has let someone else's version of reality gradually replace her own. "All right," I said. "Let me get dressed. I have some calls to make." I went upstairs, closed the bedroom door, sat on the bed that Gil and I had shared for 2 decades and breathed. Then I opened the closet. On the top shelf, behind Gil's old union cap and a shoebox of tax returns from 2009, was a padded mailer I had placed there the week after his funeral and never opened. It was from Beaumont and Associates, an attorney's office downtown. The label read, "For Essie Mae Dupree. Open when you're ready." Gil must have arranged it before he got sick. I had never known him to be secretive about anything except the way he loved. He showed it in acts rather than words, and he never made a performance of what he provided. Inside was a sealed envelope in his handwriting and a note clipped from the attorney. "Gilbert asked that we hold this until you requested it, or until circumstances required it. He said you would know when." I opened Gil's letter. "Essie, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I hope to God you waited until you needed it. I set this up because I knew you. You would have told me to save it different, spend it different. You always were more practical than I deserved. I need you to know some things. I worked 31 years and I saved what I could. In the beginning, I didn't save much. But the last 15 years, once the house was nearly paid off and you were making good money at Carver, I started putting money somewhere quiet. I didn't want to talk about it because I didn't want you planning your life around it. I wanted you to find it when you needed it. Not before. The life insurance policy, $720,000. Policy papers are in the second envelope from Beaumont's office. It should have been paid out already. If it hasn't, call them. The number's on the page. The investment accounts. I opened them in 2007 with $8,000 in overtime I'd saved over 2 years. I added to them every year after that. Statements are attached. Value as of last December, $538,400. My union pension, $38,000 a year for the rest of your life, plus 2.5% cost of living each year. Jim Collier at Local 150 has the paperwork. He's been expecting your call for 2 years. He's too polite to push. The property. I bought a 4-unit building on Tillman Avenue in 2016. You didn't know. I used an LLC, GLD Properties. Deed is at Beaumont's office. Current value approximately $390,000. The property manager is a woman named Denise Cooper. She's honest. She's been depositing $3,200 a month into the GLD account since January 2022. That's 27 months of income sitting there, waiting for you. Essie, I am not a man who said I love you easily, and I know that cost you sometimes. So let me say it now in the only language I ever really knew. I spent 15 years building you a way out of whatever you needed to get out of. I hope you never need it. I think you might. Use every bit of it. Don't go anywhere that isn't worthy of you. All my love, all the time. Gil. I read it 4 times. Then I pulled out the attached investment statements and a second envelope with the insurance policy inside. $720,000. Essie Mae Dupree listed as sole beneficiary. I took out a legal pad, old habits. Life insurance, 720 investment accounts, $538,400. Rental property value, $390,000. Rental income accumulated over 27 months, $86,400. Annual pension, $38,000. And then there was this house, which I now needed to understand far better than I did. I got dressed, called Jim Collier at Local 150. He picked up on the second ring and said, "Mrs. Dupree, I am so glad you finally called." The pension had been depositing for 27 months. But not to me, to a joint account opened 5 weeks after Gil died, co-held in my name and my daughter's. Jim gave me the account number. I wrote it down. I drove downtown, sat across from the branch manager at First Community Bank, and asked to see all accounts bearing my name. She showed me 2 I knew and 1 I didn't. The joint account had been opened April 29th. My daughter's name was on it. For 27 months, $3,166 a month from Local 150 had deposited automatically. Total accumulated, $85,482. Withdrawals, $54,000. Venmo transfers to a username I didn't recognize. "Is this your signature on the account opening form?" the manager asked. I looked. It was not. I left with 2 things: a fraud report in progress in the name of an attorney, a woman named Dina, who specialized in elder financial abuse. I want to stop here. Because someone watching this is going to ask what I know they'll ask. Because I've seen it in the comments on stories like mine 100 times. Why didn't you say something sooner? Why didn't you push back when they rearranged your house, dismissed your cooking, moved your late husband's memory into boxes in the garage? I'll tell you why. Because I had spent 63 years being told that a good woman accommodates. that the measure of a mother is how much she can absorb without complaint, that asking for your own space in your own home is some form of selfishness dressed up as a burden. I did not push back because I had not yet understood that staying silent was not patience. It was practice in abandoning myself. I understand it now. Dina's office was on the second floor of a building downtown with a potted fern by the door that looked like it had survived harder things than I had. She was black, mid-50s, and she did not waste my time. "Tell me everything," she said, and took 4 pages of notes. When I finished, she set her pen down. "The pension account, if that signature was forged or obtained under false pretenses, is financial elder abuse, felony in Tennessee. The trust documents your daughter had you sign last fall, depending on exactly what they say, may constitute fraud. You had no independent legal counsel, you were a recent widow, and the language almost certainly does not reflect what you were told it said. Can they keep my house?" They tried to. Whether they succeeded depends on the exact documents. But even if the trust is valid on its face, we can challenge it on grounds of undue influence and material misrepresentation. Your case is strong. She leaned forward slightly. "What do you want, Mrs. Dupree?" I thought about my son-in-law standing in Gil's doorway the day they arrived, looking at everything Gil had built like he was taking inventory. I thought about the Niagara Falls photo sitting in the garage in a box. I thought about 27 months of my husband's pension diverted while I was clipping grocery coupons. "I want to sell this house," I said, "and I want to go somewhere beautiful." Dina nodded slowly. "Then let's build you a door." Over the following 6 weeks, while my daughter posted photographs of her kitchen to a home design account she and my son-in-law were building online, I worked quietly. Day 1. Dina's office filed emergency injunctive relief to freeze the joint pension account and restore my sole control. Police report filed for forgery. Day 2. Claimed the life insurance. Spoke to Gil's investment firm. Accounts transferred to a new institution in my name only. Met with Anise Cooper, the property manager, who exhaled with visible relief at finally speaking to me directly. "I kept waiting for Mrs. Dupree to call," she said. "I only ever dealt with a man named Trent after the first year. He told me you were managing some health things." My son-in-law had been intercepting her communications for over 12 months, telling her I wasn't available, redirecting questions. Day 3. A real estate attorney reviewed the trust documents. The language gave my son-in-law co-trustee authority, but it contained a legal defect. My signature had been obtained without independent counsel and without a proper disclosure statement. In Tennessee, that made it voidable. The house was still mine. I listed it with an agent the next morning. Cash buyers only. We had an offer in 9 days, $387,000, a young couple, both teachers, expecting their first child. "They want to close in 45 days, my agent told me." Perfect. I had been speaking by phone with a woman named Bea, a retired teacher from Birmingham who had moved to a hill town in Tuscany 3 years earlier and hosted a small supper club for American expats. She had found me through an online group after I started quietly researching. "Come for a visit first," she said, "but I think you'll stay. We have a thing here about women who arrive and never want to leave." I booked a one-way ticket for June 30th. On June 15th, I cooked Sunday dinner. Red beans and rice the way Gil made them, with the andouille he special ordered because he said the regular kind was an insult to the recipe. Cornbread from scratch with a crackling crust. Collard greens with smoked turkey, low and slow, the way my mother taught me. Peach cobbler from a recipe so old in my family that no one could say anymore who first wrote it down. My daughter came to the table in a new dress. My son-in-law wore that particular variety of expensive casual that telegraphs money while pretending not to care about it. My neighbor Vernell came. My sister drove up from Hattiesburg. My friend from church, Ola, came and brought sweet potato pie. Vernell made sweet tea. My sister brought rolls. We ate. It was the best meal I had cooked in 2 years. I felt Gil in every bite of it. When the cobbler was set on the table, I put down my fork. "I have some news," I said. My daughter looked up. My son-in-law looked up. Vernell already knew. She'd known since March. She folded her hands in her lap like a woman settling in for something she'd been waiting to witness. "I've accepted an offer on the house. It closes July 12th. The new owners take possession July 31st. Silence. "What?" My daughter's voice was barely above a whisper. "You told me to find my own place," I said. So I did. I found a 2-bedroom apartment in a hill town in Tuscany. I leave June 30th. My son-in-law set down his fork. Miss Essie, the trust. The trust was voided in court 6 weeks ago, I said. Undue influence and improper execution. The order was filed April 29th. The color left his face. The pension account has been restored to my sole ownership. The $54,000 withdrawn over 22 months is the subject of an ongoing investigation. Your name came up in the documentation. I kept my voice level. I imagine you'll be hearing from someone about that. My daughter had gone very still. The rental property on Tillman Avenue sold last week for $403,000. The investment accounts are in good shape. The life insurance was paid 2 months ago. I looked at my daughter. Only at her. Not him. Your father left me more than either of us knew. He spent 15 years making sure I'd have a way out of whatever I needed to get out of. She started to cry, not the pretty kind. Mama. I'm not angry with you, I said. And I meant it. Not yet. Maybe later I would be. At that moment I was mostly clear-eyed and finished and profoundly tired. But I need you to understand what happened in this house. And I need you to sit with that understanding without me managing your feelings about it. So I'm going to go live my life. When you're ready, when you truly understand what your husband did and what you allowed, you call me. My son-in-law stood up. You can't just... The food on this table, I said quietly, took me 3 hours to make. I have been cooking for this family my entire adult life. I have been adjusting, accommodating, making room, making peace. I am done making room. I stood up. Vernell, take the cobbler home, all of it. I walked out of my dining room, down the hallway I had vacuumed for 27 years, and out my front door. Behind me, I heard my son-in-law say something sharp and low. I heard my daughter say, "Stop." Just that one word. The first time I had heard her say it to him in 15 months. I chose to take it as a beginning. I landed in Florence on the afternoon of July 1st. Gold light coming off the stone buildings like the whole city had been polished just before I arrived. Bea met me at the train station holding a sign that read, "Welcome home, Essie May," and carrying a thermos of coffee, because she said she knew I'd need it after 17 hours of travel, and that airport espresso was a scam. She was 68, originally from Birmingham, moved to Tuscany after her own version of a story she said would keep for wine. She had laugh lines that went all the way up, and the posture of a woman who had stopped apologizing for taking space. "You look tired," she said. "I am tired." "The rest here is different," she said. "It'll feel like finally catching up on sleep you didn't know you owed yourself." She was right. My apartment was in a village called Greve in Chianti, 20 minutes south of Florence, set on a hillside where the nights were genuinely quiet, and the mornings smelled like rosemary from the garden below my window. 2 bedrooms, terracotta floors worn smooth, a small terrace where the Chianti hills rolled out in every direction like the land was breathing. The first morning I sat out there with my coffee, and I did not think about anyone's filming schedule or dietary restrictions or algorithm. I thought about Gil driving his truck home from a job site, hands still dirty from the work, telling me about a sunset he'd caught on the highway. "You would have liked it, S," he always said, like he spent his whole life filing away beautiful things specifically for me. "I see it, Gil," I said out loud to the hills. "I see it now." The first month was harder than beautiful, the way all real things are. My Italian was less than 0. I pointed at bread and felt foolish. I missed my sister. I missed the smell of my own kitchen on a Sunday morning. I missed Vernell. But Bea brought me into her supper club. 6 women around a table, American, British. 1 Kenyan American, who had been in Florence 12 years and spoke Italian like water. They met every other Thursday. They brought food from wherever they were from and asked no more than you wanted to tell and offered no less than you needed. They did not know me as anyone's mother. They did not know me as a librarian or a widow or the woman who used to own a house that was too big for her. They knew me as Essie, who made the best cobbler any of them had ever tasted and who had walked away from everything she'd built without burning it to the ground. That felt like the truest version of myself I had been in years. I started volunteering at a small English language library in Florence on Tuesday mornings. I started teaching 2 children from Bea's building. Siblings 7 and 9, reading comprehension 3 afternoons a week. I walked every evening at dusk. I started sketching the hillside view from my terrace, badly and enthusiastically and without apology. 3 months after I arrived, my daughter called. She was calling from an apartment, not our house. She said she and my son-in-law were separated. She said it with a flatness that told me she had been sitting with that fact long enough that it had stopped being a surprise. She said she had been in therapy. She said she was trying to understand how she had let things go so far. "I know what he did, Mama," she said, to the account, to the documents. "I didn't know all of it when it was happening, but I knew enough that I should have stopped it, and I didn't." I let her sit in that for a moment. "Are you safe?" I asked. "Yes." "Are you taking care of yourself?" "I'm trying." "Then that's where we start," I said. "That's the only place there is." She asked if she could visit. I told her yes, but not yet. I told her I needed a little more time to be Essie before I was her mother again. She said she understood. I believe she did. We talked for 40 minutes. When I hung up, I sat on the terrace in the dark, the Chianti Hills invisible but present, the way the things that hold you often are. I am 63 years old. I own a 2-bedroom apartment in a Tuscan hill town, purchased in October, cash, the way Gil would have liked. I live on what my husband built for me over 15 quiet years. Pension, investments, the income from a building on Tillman Avenue that I have now taken over managing myself. I have a neighbor who brings me figs from her garden and laughs at my Italian and does not expect me to be anything other than what I am. I have 5 children who come to my apartment on Tuesday afternoons and play piano scales badly and beautifully, while the light comes through the window at that particular Tuscan angle that makes everything look like a painting. My husband built me a life I didn't know I had. My daughter told me to find my own place, and the 2 of them, one on purpose and one by accident, gave me exactly the push I had needed for years to finally become the woman I had been putting off. They told me to find my own place, so I did. I found it in Tuscany. But more than that, I found it in myself, in the part of me that stopped making room for people who had never once made room for me. If you are a woman who has been handed a brochure for a place where people your age can be quietly managed, if someone who lives under your roof has looked at the life you built and decided it would suit them better than it suits you, I want you to hear this. You are not a problem to be solved. You are a life still in progress. Find your own place. It might be somewhere you have never once imagined. It might be exactly where you belong.